All right, so welcome to part 6. This is my story about the corruption that I've been experiencing in Nevada and the abuse that I've been experiencing and the violation of my federal constitutional rights and the deprivation of my property and the fact that 4 years later, I'm still forced to be married to a man that committed fraud against me. So I'm unable to remarry. I am unable to buy my own home, even though I am ready to. So this is happening not just to me, but African American women all over the United States in United States courtrooms. And for 2 years, I had attorneys, and my attorneys committed legal malpractice. I reported them to the state bar, and they did nothing. And now for the last year, I've been forced to represent myself, and being so, they violate my constitutional rights. They ignore my motions. They have violated my right to due process, to be heard, they're having ex parte communications. And I'm hoping that making these videos first gets the truth out, because the attacks have now become upon me and my work that I do in honor of my son, and in hopes that if anything happens to me, that the truth is already out there. So this is part 6, and I'm hoping that you guys are watching the videos in order. It gives you a greater understanding. That's why I'm trying to break it all down into small pieces so people can understand what I've truly gone through. So this video is going to be about the second step of misconduct. So the first one, I reported it to the Las Vegas Police Department in 2018, and they did absolutely nothing. They refused to do anything. So then I reported the forgery and fraud to Nevada Secretary of State in December of 2018 after I received the respondent docs. So if you guys watched the previous video, it explains what the respondent docs are, what was in there, and the evidence that has been concealed by Raina Hughes and now almost 40 other agencies. So that's why I'm breaking it down in very small pieces, and this video is going to be about the misconduct of the Secretary of State. So once I got the respondent docs, I then filed a complaint with the Secretary of State, and I told them my name was forged. I do not even know who Nikki Secaucus Bott is, and she also acted as the escrow agent. Therefore, she had dual roles where she would collect commission and she forged my name. So this was clear evidence. So I gave this evidence to the Secretary of State, all the respondent docs, and the Secretary of State acknowledged that Nikki Secaucus was the notary. So that is it. The fact that she was the escrow agent and the notary proved that my name was forged, because she could not hold dual roles. I took it a step further by getting an expert that again proved my name was forged. So when the Secretary of State got this complaint, instead of following the proper procedures and notifying the district attorney and getting a prosecutor attorney involved and putting Nikki Secaucus Bott in jail for her crimes, they concealed this. And at this time, I was represented by Chris Tillman and Jennings and Fulton. So Logan Wilson, Jared Jennings, and Adam Fulton. I had 2 sets of attorneys. None of these attorneys helped me. And all the attorneys had very clear evidence that Nikki Secaucus Bott was the escrow agent and the notary and forged my name. So when the Secretary of State did the investigation, they simply came back to me and said, Nikki Secaucus Bott did not provide her journal. So she didn't have a copy of my ID. She didn't have a signature from me in her journal. She notarized it herself, and here the victim is telling them the name was forged. I also provided the Secretary of State with the audio file from Bobby saying, I did not know you weren't on the title. So this was plenty of evidence for the Secretary of State to act. And they did nothing. Lenora Muller, I have filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of State and Lenora Muller, and the Attorney General and the District Attorney have now been protecting her, as well as Raina Hughes and every other judge in this situation who has committed misconduct. So I'm going to go over what I sent to the Secretary of State, the fact that they acknowledged Nikki Secaucus Bott was the notary and the escrow agent and did absolutely nothing, and the fact that she didn't turn in her journal, and they, again, did not act and allowed me to be abused, stolen from, and lied about for 3 additional years since I filed that complaint. So I will go through the evidence slowly so that everybody can understand. And I hope you guys please share this video and go to my petition, www.change.org, Justice for Aiden's Mom, and please sign the petition. The more signatures I get, then I can get this over to Congress so that they can see the corruption, the misconduct, and the abuse that I have suffered for 4 years. So I'm asking for all of your guys' help by simply sharing and signing the petition. And at this point, I have almost 4,000 signatures. So I'm hoping once we get to 5,000, we can get the news to cover this story. Because if you have to fear as an American going into a courtroom when you're simply asking for an annulment, and it leads to 4 years of endless litigation where you are then attacked as the victim and labeled the criminal and vexuous, and all of these fake orders that are going in that are then being able to be shared with people who support my son's foundation and my work when I'm doing this honestly. So I'm making these videos to get the truth out there, and I'm hoping that maybe my story brings some kind of reform to our justice system and to our court systems, because nobody should be abused the way that I have. So I will go over the complaint sent to Secretary of State, their response, the respondent docs that they received. If you watched the previous video, you will know exactly what's in those respondent docs. I'll go over the evidence that both of my attorneys knew about the respondent docs and the legal separation filings that I filed in December. And everybody concealed this information, continue to collect legal fees for me, and prolong my trial for 2 more years from the date that they knew that mortgage fraud had occurred. So please continue to share and sign the petition at www.change.org, Justice for Aiden's Mom. And I'll also post more of this evidence on my Facebook page at This Mama Fights Equality and Justice Now. Part 6, Corruption of the Nevada Secretary of State Lenora Muller and the Legal Malpractice of Chris Tillman in Jennings and Fulton. Lenora Muller from the Secretary of State handled my complaint for fraud and forgery. The complaint was filed in December of 2018 after I received the respondent docs from Shumway Van, Linda Na, and Bobby Ante. Note on the Nevada Secretary of State complaint, the paper on the left, that I reported forgery and fraud. And Nikki Secaucus Bott did not turn in her journal because she did not have my signature and did not have an ID. So along with the fact that I told them my name was forged, that she didn't produce her journal, and she was also the escrow agent, Nevada Secretary of State had plenty of proof of what had occurred and should have took action by reporting this to the district attorney's office. Instead, they simply charged her with a $250 fine paid to the Secretary of State and simply closed out the complaint. Note on the left from the Secretary of State on April 3rd, 2019, a year before the divorce trial where Raina Hughes fabricated her ruling, they acknowledged that Nikki Secaucus Bott was the notary and the escrow agent, and she did not turn in her journal. They collected $250 from her that they kept and then closed out the case, completely ignoring that she forged my name in the mortgage fraud. You can see on the right that this complaint was handled by Lenora Muller. Lenora Muller has now been protected by each judge who is refusing my right to be heard, the Attorney General, the federal judges, when you can see clearly her misconduct. Nikki Secaucus Bott did not produce her journal and did not have an ID to prove that the signature that was forged was done by me. So I proved that Nikki Secaucus Bott did not have a journal and did not get a signature from me for a quitclaim deed, which means she fraudulently conveyed title into Bobby Ante's name. Lenora Muller was given evidence that Nikki Secaucus also goes by Nikki Bott. So when she looked at the closing disclosure from the CD provided to her when I filed the complaint, she could clearly see that Nikki Secaucus and Nikki Bott were the same person. Yet she knowingly concealed mortgage fraud, forgery, and notary fraud, which makes Lenora Muller guilty in her official capacity of committing mortgage fraud. Here is the last page from the closing disclosure. In the bottom right corner, you can clearly see the escrow agent, also known as the settlement agent, was Nikki Secaucus Bott, working for National Title Company, not Stewart Title Company. Here you will see that National Title Company collected fees for escrow fees as well as notary fees, notaries that never happened. So they committed fraud on the closing disclosure and then allowed Bobby Ante to pay off $8,000 in student loans out of the deposit without my knowledge. After reporting Nikki Secaucus Bott to Nevada Secretary of State and the police department and her boss, Tracy Bouchard, she then went on social media and denied everything that happened with the Secretary of State and all repercussions taken against her, and then threatened me. I also notified her boss, Tracy Bouchard, when I found out that my name was forged to a quitclaim deed, in which he took absolutely no action. He is still employing Nikki Secaucus Bott and providing her with his legal counsel to attempt to evade prosecution for mortgage fraud, forgery, wire fraud. Because of the actions of Nikki Secaucus Bott, I have been put through 4 years of endless litigation. My foundation has lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in support and donations for childhood cancer families, and they refuse to arrest Nikki Secaucus Bott, even though the evidence is clear as day, because her boss, Tracy Bouchard, has enough money to bribe the judges and continue to help her evade prosecution while he keeps her employed, even though he knows she committed fraud. Therefore, anybody who knowingly conceals mortgage fraud or forgery is guilty of it themselves. So now Tracy Bouchard should be arrested for mortgage fraud and forgery, but has never seen one day in court using his ties to judges, lawyers, and organized crime. After the divorce trial, I found out everybody was defrauding me. I then started investigating on my own. I found this other deed of sale. This deed of sale was signed by Bobby Ante, and you could clearly see it says his sole and separate property as a married man. So he absolutely did know that I was not on the title, and he was fraudulently conveying title into his own name. Notice on the right, this is another notary, Melanie Traynor, who fraudulently notarized the deed of trust into Bobby Ante's name. Melanie Traynor happens to be the next door neighbor of Nikki Secaucus Bott. All this information was shared with Las Vegas Police Department as well as the Secretary of State, where I then filed a complaint against Melanie Traynor with the Secretary of State, which has still been ignored. After finding out Melanie Traynor fraudulently conveyed title into Bobby Ante's name, and she was also the neighbor of Nikki Secaucus Bott, I submitted all of this information to RLI Insurance Company to collect the bond on Melanie Traynor. I gave them the letter from the expert, proof of notary fraud and mortgage fraud, and this was the letter that they gave back to me denying to pay out the bond and saying that they needed a court order, which is not the truth, and it is illegal to deny paying out the bond. On the right, you will see an email from my attorney, Jennings and Fulton, Adam Fulton. Here, he admits that he was litigating 3 separate cases over the same issue, but withheld evidence from the divorce trial, and then tried to build a case for Lenora of defamation, knowing that the deed was invalid, and concealed the information, defrauding his own client. It is illegal for them to litigate 3 matters over the same issue. They also did not report that Shumway Van was doing the exact same thing. This was reported to the state bar, and the state bar of Nevada has done absolutely nothing to any of the attorneys. I then filed my second complaint with the Nevada Secretary of State, reporting Melanie Traynor and again the notary fraud of Nikki Secaucus Bott. To this day, the Nevada Secretary of State refuses to answer this complaint. Melanie Traynor's complaint was filed in July of 2020, almost over a year ago. And still today, Nevada Secretary of State and Lenora Muller refused to respond to the complaint and acknowledge the fact that there was 2 notaries and that Nikki Secaucus Bott was the escrow agent and the notary, which is clear fraud. This proves in March of 2019, I gave my counsel all the legal separation documents that were filed into the case in legal separation and the divorce, reporting the mortgage fraud and forgery. Yet this lawyer, Chris Tillman, did not submit any of that information, concealed it, and then continued to charge me legal fees when I was entitled to a prosecution attorney and legal representation through the state as a victim of a crime. This email in February of 2019 through my counsel Chris Tillman and his assistant Kathy Gentry, they were very aware that I filed for legal separation. They said that they looked into the filing and the evidence that I submitted, and they were getting ready for trial. Had they actually looked into it and they were not concealing mortgage fraud, they would have never prepared for a trial, being that Bobby Ante had no interest in the home, and the only piece of property we were contesting was the home that he obtained through fraud. Therefore, Chris Tillman and Kathy Gentry knowingly concealed mortgage fraud, forgery, and wire fraud, therefore are guilty of wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and the Nevada State Bar refuses to hold them accountable. He has not been charged with any crimes, and he has not been forced to repay me any of the legal fees that he stole from me. This email to my counsel, Logan Wilson, through Jennings and Fulton, proves that he was also fully aware of the legal separation documents and that the evidence that contained mortgage fraud. Yet they continued to collect $16,000 in legal fees, prolonged the trial date, and then when trial did come, withheld that information at trial. On the right, you will see in 2019, Logan Wilson also received the audio file of Bobby admitting he did not know I was not on the title. Yet they submitted none of this evidence at the mock trial that was held in 2020, where there was no witnesses, no jury, and they never reported the legal malpractice of Shumway Van representing Linda Na and Bobby Ante. They also let Linda Na testify on the behalf of Bobby Ante, which she was not a credible witness. Therefore, I should have gotten a new trial with attorneys paid for by the state, and the state bar should have debarred all attorneys involved. Yet, till this day, they've still done nothing. This is a letter from my complaint to the state bar against Chris Tillman, clearly letting them know of mortgage fraud, forgery, and the legal malpractice of Shumway Van, Garrett Chase, and Grayson Moulton. Yet the Nevada State Bar simply closed out the complaint took a year and a half to answer the complaint and took no action against Chris Tillman, Jennings and Fulton, or Shumway Van. They are now protecting all law firms. On the left, you will see a court-stamped document that I submitted in 2018 for the legal separation and separate maintenance. This was filed into both cases, and Raina Hughes concealed this information. It was 301 pages of evidence of abuse, mortgage fraud, wire fraud, and concealment. Yet Raina Hughes did absolutely nothing and then fabricated a ruling 2 years later. On the right, you will see the respondent docs that were inside the legal separation filing. So Raina Hughes had clear knowledge of the fraud, the forgery, the conflict of interest from Shumway Van, and she allowed me to be attacked, abused, lied about, and now slandered all over social media when she had clear evidence of fraud 2 years prior to the trial. All right, so thanks for hanging in there with me. That was the misconduct of Nevada Secretary of State, Lenora Muller, and the previous video showed you the misconduct of the Las Vegas Police Department, Galvar, Ingrid Trujillo, and the legal malpractice of Shumway Van, Chris Tillman, and Jennings and Fulton. So my next video, I will go over the legal separation filing, what I filed into both cases that were being heard by the same judge, Raina Hughes, and this is the judge that completely fabricated her ruling. So part 7 will be the legal separation documents that I filed to Raina Hughes, and I will show you how she concealed them, how my attorneys committed additional legal malpractice, and then we will go over each fabrication in her ruling that she specifically did to help the bond company deny my bond, and to try to alleviate blame from the title company, National Title Company, and ERA brokers. So I will go over part 7 with you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into part 6. It's sad that I have to sit here and do this in 2021. We should have equality in our justice system. We should have honest government workers and honest judges and lawyers. And if we don't, this is a serious problem. They're destroying people's lives and we need reform. So that is why I'm taking a stand, no matter how much danger it puts me in, to share with everybody what is happening in the U.S. courtrooms, how African American women are being treated in U.S. courtrooms, the deprivation of our rights, and how the Constitution is not upheld at any level in our government system, not in the police department, not in the courtrooms, and not in our government offices that control the community. So I am asking you guys to please share, sign my petition, tag your congressmen, because if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And at any point, someone can knock on your door and say that you signed a paper and take your entire home from you, and then try to destroy your character, your work, and everything in the process to protect big companies. Because I am just one person. But I am one person with a voice. I am one person with faith. And I am one person who is not as scared to fight for what's right. And that's what I'm doing. I want justice. I want an annulment, and I want what I'm entitled to for the crimes that have been committed against me. And I want Nikki Secaucus Bott, Linda Nah, and Bobby Ante arrested for their crimes and the 4 years that they conspired to cover it up. So keep tuning in. Lindsay Licari, Life After Loss, the corruption of the Nevada court systems. Thank you guys for your support. And I hope one day soon I will be getting on here to declare a victory that I finally got justice in the United States.